The alien pilot laughed. Then a human rode her Ikran like a legend. The twin sons of VYR hit the landing pads like hammers. Heat shimmered. Dust rose in small spirals. Mason Drake stepped off the shuttle and felt the planet pull at his bones. Gravity was heavier here. Every breath felt thick. Every step felt slow. He rolled his shoulders and adjusted the collar of his reinforced jumpsuit. It clung to him like a second skin already wet with sweat. Outpost Verdun spread across the red cliffs like a quick sketch. Prefab buildings. Antennas. Ramps bolted into stone. Markets buzzed with alien voices. A dozen species moved past him, eyes sliding to the human and then away. Some faces were curious. Others were cold. Mason kept walking. He had seen this look on other worlds. Humans were new to the old tables of power. Many did not like that. Inside the terminal, an automated voice welcomed him. The clerk at immigration barely looked up. For arms. Flat tone. Purpose of visit. Mason slid over his ID chip. Flight instructor. Coalition assignment. The clerk's brow rose a little. Stamp. Good luck, he muttered. The locals do not enjoy being told how to fly. Mason grabbed his duffel and headed for the cliff bar he had spotted from the landing ramp. A weathered sign hung over a door carved into the rock. Inside, the light was low and smoky. The air smelled like hot metal and sweet spice. Voices layered together into a warm hum. He ordered something the bartender swore was safe for humans. It burned on the way down and left his tongue tingling. You are the new instructor. The voice came from behind him. Calm. Musical. He turned. She stood with her back against the wall. Blue skin like soft light. Silver hair braided under a wide-brim hat. Her eyes were violet with horizontal pupils. A rider's eyes. Her suit was leather and metal, cut for speed and control. Mason Drake, he said. He gestured at the empty chair. She did not sit. Ryla, she said. I lead the VYR scout wing. So word travels fast, Mason said. He kept his tone easy. He had learned not to rise to bait. Ryla studied him. You fly machines. You say you can teach our scouts. She tipped her hat just enough to show a small smile. Anyone can press buttons. Mason sipped his drink. Buttons help, he said. But flying is more than hands. It's eyes. It's gut. It's trust. Her smile sharpened. She lifted her voice so the whole bar could hear. If you are a real pilot, prove it. Ride my Erics. Conversation stopped. The hum went flat. Heads turned. Bets formed in low whispers. Mason felt the room lean toward him. He set his glass down. I wasn't told that was part of the job, he said. It isn't, Ryla replied. But no rider here will respect a teacher who cannot touch the sky our way. Mason stood. He met her eyes. Lead on. They stepped into the late light. The cliff opened into a high plateau above a wide green valley. Trees with spiral trunks held a bright sea of leaves. Floating rocks drifted like islands. Lines of luminous moss glowed under their edges. Wind sang along the stone. Ryla put 2 fingers in her mouth and whistled. The sound cut the air like a blade. At first there was only blue sky, then a moving dot, then a shadow. The Erics came in fast and heavy, wings wide as a sail, skin like brushed steel. A bony crest crowned its head. Yellow eyes fixed on Mason, intelligent and wary. Stormlance, Ryla said, soft with pride. My partner for 8 cycles. The Erics bowed its neck. Ryla climbed a ridge of bone along the spine and sat bareback. No saddle. No bridle. She slid forward and patted the place behind her. Your turn, off-worlder. A small crowd had followed them from the bar. They gathered at a safe distance, whispering. Mason felt the old pressure in his chest. Fear and thrill. He had ejected scars in combat hours. He had flown through storms that broke ships in half. Still, this was different. This was alive. He grabbed the ridge and pulled himself up behind Ryla. The Erics' skin was warm and smooth under his hands. Ryla glanced back. Hold tight, she said, and try not to scream. Stormlance leapt. The world dropped away. Air turned to roar. Mason's stomach climbed into his throat. The valley rushed up. At the last possible breath, wings snapped open. Lift grabbed them and flung them skyward. Mason's laugh cracked out before he could stop it. We're just beginning, Ryla shouted. Her hair whipped across his cheek. Stormlance banked hard toward a cluster of floating stone. Gaps opened and closed like jaws. Into the stone maze, she called. Novices break here. Mason's focus sharpened. The wind was a map. The rock was a rhythm. He felt Ryla's weight shift, the way her legs pressed, the subtle lean of her shoulders. He mirrored her. He let breath set the timing. He stopped fighting the wing beats and rode them. "Let me try," he yelled. She hesitated. Only a beat. Then she slid a hand over his and guided his palms to raised nodes along the ridge. "Press here to ask left. Here to ask right. He will test you if you fear him." Mason centered himself. "Easy, big guy," he murmured to Stormlance. He pressed. The Erics answered with a clean, smooth bank. 3 stone arches lined up ahead. Mason leaned with small, certain moves. They wove the slalom like thread through a needle. Ryla's laugh was different now. Less mockery. More surprise. "How are you doing this?" "It's like atmospheric combat," Mason said. "You don't just fly the craft. You become it." They burst from the maze into open sky. The suns hung low, painting the clouds gold and violet. Ryla pointed toward a narrow shelf with a thin waterfall. Mason pressed a descend and steady pattern. Stormlance folded into a gentle glide and touched down as soft as dust. They slid to the ground. For a breath, neither spoke. Wind and water filled the silence. Ryla walked to the pool and drank. Mason knelt and cupped his hands. The water was cold and sweet. "I meant to shame you," she said at last. "Send you home with a story and a bruise." "Sorry to disappoint," he said, and smiled. Her eyes held his. Not cold now. Not quite warm. Something in between. "Maybe not a disappointment," she said. "Maybe a problem." Above them, Stormlance stretched his wings and watched the horizon. Somewhere far below, the ground gave a slow, careful sigh, like a giant turning in sleep. Mason did not hear it. Not yet. He only felt the quiet click of a door inside him opening, and the sky waiting beyond. The suns had slipped lower by the time Mason and Ryla returned to Outpost Verdun. The wind off the cliffs smelled of heat and rust. Their landing drew a crowd. Miners, traders, off-world engineers, and a cluster of blue-skinned riders who stared with disbelief written across their faces. No human had ever flown in Eric's before, let alone returned alive. Elder Terran was among them. His deep indigo skin shimmered faintly, the long cords of silver hair tied with feathers and beads that clicked in the breeze. Beside him stood another rider, taller, broader, with a jagged scar down his cheek. His eyes burned with fury. "Ryla of the Western Sky," the elder said, his voice low but heavy. "You brought an off-worlder to our sacred kin, without the council's blessing." Ryla bowed slightly. "It was a challenge, not a ceremony." "I did not." The scarred rider interrupted. "You let him touch your mount." "Stormlance, the bond is sacred." His voice cracked like thunder. "You've shamed the wing." Mason took a single step forward, calm but firm. "If I broke a rule, I'll own it." But the challenge was hers. The warrior sneered. "You think words will fix what you've done, human?" Elder Terran lifted a hand for silence. His eyes, old and sharp, fixed on Mason. "You rode in Eric's without neural link, without training, and lived. That is not possible." He gestured toward the temple that rose from the cliff's edge. "Come. The council will decide what to do with you." The temple's interior felt ancient, carved directly into the mountain, its walls alive with carvings that shimmered faintly when touched by light. The air carried a hum, a soft vibration that brushed against Mason's skin like distant thunder. At the center waited a frail woman in white robes. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes clouded and blind, yet her face turned toward Mason with precision. Elder Terran bowed. "Keeper Nara, we bring the human who rode the sky." She raised a trembling hand. "Step closer, child of stars." Mason obeyed. Her fingers, thin and cool, brushed across his palms. She traced the lines slowly, following each ridge and curve. Then she inhaled sharply. "The mark, it matches." Ryla frowned. "Matches what?" The keeper turned toward the carvings on the wall. She pressed her palm against a pattern, and ancient symbols flared to life. 2 figures, one human-like, one winged, rising together above a storm. "The old prophecy," the keeper whispered. It spoke of a stranger from beyond the sky who would ride as one born of wind. One who bridges 2 worlds when darkness stirs beneath the ground. The room fell silent. Elder Terran's voice broke the stillness. "Old tales," he said cautiously. "Stories told to children." But Ryla's expression had changed. Her earlier defiance faded into something like doubt. Or all. You think this human is the starborn rider? She asked softly. Cain, the scarred warrior, barked a laugh. Blasphemy. He's just lucky he didn't fall to his death. Mason looked from one alien to the next, uneasy under the attention. I didn't come here to play savior, he said. I came to teach flying. The keeper's blind eyes turned toward him again. Perhaps that is what you believe. But the winds know more than they speak. Outside, thunder cracked across a cloudless sky. The sound rolled through the temple like a warning. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Elder Tarun frowned. A tremor? No, the keeper said quietly. A stirring. Ryla's hand brushed the hilt of the blade at her thigh. The mountains have been restless for cycles, she said. Quakes. Strange lights. Some say it is the gods waking. Or something else, murmured the elder. Mason felt the hairs on his arms rise. The air felt heavier now, humming like a live engine before it bursts. He didn't believe in prophecies, but something deep inside whispered that this was more than a myth. He had felt it when he touched the Eryx, a pulse that had answered his own heartbeat. When they stepped out of the temple, the suns were sinking fast. The sky had turned molten orange. Mason walked beside Ryla in silence until they reached the edge of the cliff again. Stormlance waited there, wings folded, golden eyes glowing in the dusk. Ryla crossed her arms, her voice lower now. You shouldn't have survived that flight. I get that a lot, Mason said, managing a grin. I've made a career out of not dying. She studied him, unreadable. You think it's just skill? I think it's instinct. Maybe connection. He looked at Stormlance, then at her. Same thing your people believe. Trust between pilot and partner. Ryla didn't answer. She turned toward the horizon, where the mountains loomed dark and sharp against the sunset. You may have changed more than you know, human, she said. The council will argue for days. But the winds, they've already decided. The breeze shifted. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled again, long and low, like the heartbeat of something vast beneath the earth. Ryla looked at him over her shoulder, her violet eyes bright in the fading light. Get some rest, Mason Drake. Tomorrow, the sky won't be your only challenge. She walked away, her silhouette framed by fire-red light. Mason stayed on the ledge for a long time, staring at the storm crawling across the horizon. He didn't believe in destiny, but the wind around him whispered his name as if the planet itself did. And deep below, far beneath the mountains, something ancient shifted, listening. Morning came with a violet sky and silver mist drifting off the cliffs. Mason barely slept. The memory of the prophecy, a stranger from beyond the stars who rides the wind, echoed in his head like an old radio signal refusing to fade. He didn't believe in destiny, but he had felt something when he flew with Ryla, a pulse, ancient and alive, running through both of them. She met him at dawn near the hangar platforms. Stormlance waited, wings folded tight, steam rising from his hide in the cool air. Ryla looked tired but steady, her eyes hidden under her flight cap. We're heading north, she said, handing him a small pack. You'll want this. He peered inside. Dried fruit. Metal flask. A folded map etched on synth paper. Field trip, he asked. More like reconnaissance, she said. The Whispering Plains. It's where the wild Eryx gather this season. The council wants to see if your species can bond with them. He slung the pack over his shoulder. You mean we're going to find me some dragon trainees? Ryla smirked. If you call them dragons again, they'll probably eat you. They took off as the suns broke the horizon. The outpost shrank behind them until it was only dust and memory. Stormlance climbed higher, slicing through the thin morning air. Below, the land unfolded like a living map. Rivers of copper light, forests of spiral trees that glittered as the wind combed through them. The sound of it, the deep rhythm of wings against wind, filled Mason's chest with something he hadn't felt in years, wonder. Ryla guided Stormlance toward the northern ridge. Few outsiders have seen the plains, she said over her shoulder. Even most VYR avoid them. They say the wind speaks there. Mason grinned. You mean literal whispers? Literal enough. The grasses grow tall and thin. The wind passing through them creates tones. It's alive. Hours later, they crested a final ridge, and Mason forgot to breathe. The Whispering Plains stretched endlessly ahead, a sea of silver grass that moved like water under the twin suns. The sound was real, low, mournful music, rising and falling with every gust. Far in the distance, Shapes moved through the haze. Dozens. No, hundreds. Erics, free and wild, spiraling together in vast sky dances. Their wings caught the light like living metal. Holy, Mason whispered. Ryla's expression softened. This is where they mate, choose riders, or kill them. Depends on the day. They landed on a ridge overlooking the plains. Mason unpacked a scanner from his belt and set it humming quietly. So this is where I'm supposed to pick volunteers? Not yet, Ryla said, crouching near the edge. The bonding ritual requires calm. Fear poisons the link. Not yet, Ryla said, crouching near the edge. The bonding ritual requires calm. Fear poisons the link. Got it. So we wait. Yes, she said. And we listen. They sat in silence for a while. The wind made music through the silver grass. It wasn't random. It almost felt like words stretched into sound. Mason couldn't shake the feeling that the plains were watching them. He turned to Ryla. You believe that prophecy stuff? Her jaw tightened. I used to think it was children's tales. But after yesterday, she hesitated, glancing at him. You connected with Stormlance faster than anyone I've seen. No link wires, no neural gel, nothing. You felt the bond. Mason shrugged. Maybe humans just improvise well. It's not improvisation, she said quietly. It's resonance. The word hung between them, soft and heavy. As the suns climbed, they set up a small camp under a jagged overhang. Ryla unrolled the map, tapping a marked region far north. See this? She said. The Forbidden Peaks. The Keeper wants me to investigate seismic activity there. Those mountains look close to the plains, Mason noted. Close enough to make me nervous. We've had tremors for weeks. Some riders claim they hear voices from inside the rock. He frowned. Voices? Not human. Not VYR. She rolled the map back up. The elders think it's superstition. But the Keeper? She hesitated. She thinks it's connected to you. Mason exhaled sharply. Fantastic. The foreigner brings earthquakes now. Night fell fast on VYR. The silver grass glowed faintly, swaying in patterns that mimicked breathing. Mason lay on his back, staring at twin moons rising above the horizon. You ever wonder, he said softly, why your people can bond with the Erics at all? I mean biologically? Ryla turned her head toward him. It's in our neural structure. The Erics share a resonance field that links to our minds. It's not technology, it's evolution. Or design, Mason murmured. What? He pointed to the mountains. If something built your people, engineered you to connect with those creatures, what if that bond wasn't natural? What if it was created? Ryla's eyes glinted in the moonlight. You sound like the old heretics. Maybe they weren't wrong. The wind picked up suddenly. The plains began to sing, louder, sharper, as if 1,000 invisible voices were calling out from beneath the earth. Stormlance raised his head, nostrils flaring. The air tasted metallic. Ryla stood. That's not the wind. Mason rose beside her. Then what is it? The sound deepened. Not a whisper now, but a low pulse that rolled through the ground like a heartbeat. The silver grass bent as if bowing to something unseen. Stormlance screeched, spreading his wings. Ryla grabbed Mason's arm. Mount up. Now. They climbed onto Stormlance as the ground trembled beneath their feet. The silver sea rippled in waves, and from far off, a flash of light erupted over the horizon, deep red, like something had torn the sky open. As they lifted off, Mason looked down. For just a second, he saw it. Dark shapes moving under the plains, as though something vast and ancient was waking below the surface. The plains kept whispering long after they were gone. And this time, the whispers carried a word that neither of them wanted to understand, a word that sounded almost human. By the second sunrise, the tremors hadn't stopped. They came in short, steady waves, like the heartbeat of the planet itself. Every few hours, the ground would hum, the silver grass shivering in unison. Stormlance refused to rest, pacing the ridge like a creature sensing something older than fear. Ryla scanned the horizon with narrowed eyes. That light we saw last night came from the northern ridge of the Forbidden Peaks. The council told me to stay away. Mason's voice was calm but firm. Then that's where we're going. Ryla turned sharply. You don't understand. My people believe those mountains are cursed. The air there, it steals your thoughts. He gave her a small grin. Then I'll try to keep my thoughts simple. Stormlance took flight, wings carving through cold air as they climbed higher into the mist. The landscape shifted from green to gray, from life to stone. Massive cliffs rose like jagged teeth, and every gust of wind carried a low hum. Not quite sound, not quite silence. The closer they flew, the heavier the air became. It felt like flying into a dream that didn't want to be remembered. Down there, Mason said, pointing toward a deep ravine glowing faintly blue. You see that light? Ryla hesitated, then nodded. Yes, it's artificial. They landed on a narrow ledge. The rocks beneath their boots were smooth, too smooth. Mason knelt, brushing away dust. Perfect lines, cut with precision far beyond primitive tools. This wasn't carved by nature, he murmured. It's an entrance. Ryla swallowed. No one in recorded history has come this far. Then congratulations, Mason said quietly. We're rewriting it. They lit portable flares and stepped inside. The tunnel sloped downward, the air growing warmer with each step. Strange markings lined the walls, not letters, but flowing shapes that pulsed faintly, like veins under translucent skin. Ryla brushed her fingers along one. The wall shivered at her touch. Mason, she whispered, these symbols, they're not just writing. They're alive. He aimed his scanner at the markings. The device beeped erratically. Energy readings off the charts. Organic alloy, maybe? Some kind of bioarchitecture. The passage opened into a vast chamber, and both of them stopped breathing. Before them stretched an entire city buried in the mountain, untouched by time. Towers of black crystal spiraled upward, linked by suspended bridges of glass. Pools of luminous liquid glowed between platforms. The light wasn't steady. It pulsed in rhythm, like a living organism sleeping beneath their feet. This can't be real, Ryla whispered, her voice trembling. It's very real, Mason said, eyes wide. And it's not ancient ruins, it's technology. They moved deeper into the heart of the city. Every sound echoed, their footsteps, their breathing, even their heartbeats seemed to bounce off invisible walls. In the center stood a towering pillar covered in the same glowing runes. Mason approached it carefully, holding his scanner near the surface. It's reacting to you, Ryla said, backing away. The pillar brightened, casting light across the chamber. Symbols rearranged themselves in spirals. Then a pulse rippled outward, a holographic projection of shifting shapes and colors, hanging in midair. Mason stepped closer. These are DNA structures. 2 sequences. Ryla squinted. Explain. He pointed to the floating double helix. This one, that's human. I'd bet anything on it. And this other one, it's your species. Ryla's voice broke into a whisper. How can that be? Humans and VYR evolved light years apart. The hologram changed again, showing a third sequence, an older one, marked by strange branching patterns. Images began to play, tall, graceful beings with multi-limbed bodies, building the city. Ryla gasped. Those are the Devourers. The monsters of our legends. They weren't monsters, Mason said softly. They were scientists. The projection unfolded a story told in light and sound. The Devourers, a species older than both their civilizations, had arrived on VYR millennia ago. They found the planet rich in resonant energy and began experiments, blending their DNA with native fauna to create a new species that could interface with the Erics, who acted as natural conductors of energy. That species became the VYR. Ryla's knees gave way. She sank to the ground, her breath shaking. We were made, we weren't born. Mason knelt beside her. You were created, yes, but you became something more. You evolved beyond them. You made your own world. Her eyes shimmered. All our stories, all our gods, built on a lie. Or on a truth your ancestors couldn't face, Mason said. They fought their creators. One, buried this place, then forgot. Another tremor shook the ground, harder this time. The hologram flickered, changing again. Mason steadied it with his hand, and new symbols appeared. A countdown. 72 hours. What is that? Ryla asked. Mason frowned. A reactivation timer. This facility, it's waking up. They ran through the corridors, following the sound of grinding machinery. A circular door at the far end hissed open, revealing a cavern filled with hundreds of pods, transparent, each containing a tall, slumbering figure. Rows and rows of Devourers, sleeping in perfect formation. They're still alive, Ryla breathed. Mason scanned the nearest pod. Life signs stable. Systems recharging. In 3 days, they'll wake up. The tremor came again, violent, deep, and angry. Cracks raced across the ceiling. Dust rained down in thin gray streams. Mason grabbed Ryla's wrist. We have to move. They sprinted back through the glowing tunnels, their flares flickering with each shockwave. Behind them, faint lights came alive along the walls, one after another, like eyes opening. When they burst into daylight, the mountain exhaled smoke and heat. Stormlance screeched from the ledge, wings flaring. Mason and Ryla climbed on, hearts pounding. As they lifted into the air, Mason looked back. The entrance glowed faintly with that same unnatural blue. They're not just waking, he said grimly. They're listening. Ryla's voice trembled, but her hands were steady on the reins. What do we do? He looked toward the horizon, toward the outpost they had left behind. We tell them the truth, and then we prepare. As they flew into the crimson sky, lightning arced behind the mountains. Not natural lightning, but thin, perfect lines of energy crawling across the peaks. The city beneath was no ruin. It was a signal, and it had already begun to answer. The flight back to Outpost Verdun was silent. Stormlant's wings beat the air in steady rhythm, but Mason's mind raced faster than any wind. A hidden city, a species that built the VYR, a countdown ticking toward the awakening of things that shouldn't exist. He looked over Ryla's shoulder. Her posture was rigid, jaw tight. Her entire world had just been rewritten, and she was holding herself together through sheer discipline. When they landed, the outpost was already restless. Tremors had reached this far north. Cracks split the ground near the hangar decks. Mason jumped down first. We tell the council everything, he said. Ryla shook her head. They won't believe you. They'll call it blasphemy. Then they'll believe you, he replied. You saw it too. Inside the council hall, the air was thick with argument. Elder Terran sat at the center, his voice steady but strained. When Ryla entered, every eye turned to her. Mason stood beside her, still streaked with mountain dust and adrenaline. You defied direct orders, Terran began. You entered forbidden ground. Ryla didn't flinch, because the truth was buried there. The Devourers weren't our demons, they were our makers. And they're waking up. The chamber erupted in chaos. Voices clashed. Some shouted denial, others fear. Kair rose from his seat, scarred face twisted in anger. You expect us to believe off-world lies? You've been corrupted by human influence. Mason stepped forward. You don't have to believe me, but you will believe the mountain when it starts walking toward you. Elder Terran raised his hand. Silence fell again. His eyes were tired, searching. If what you say is true, then every life on VYR is at risk. What do you propose, human? Mason exhaled. You need pilots, not priests. The Devourers built systems tied to neural resonance. Humans can connect differently than the VYR. That difference might let us override their signal before full reactivation. Ryla looked around the chamber. We train them, she said. Humans and VYR. Together, we bond riders across both species and link their erics into one shared frequency. Kair scoffed. You mean defile our bond even further? No, Mason said coldly. We mean survive. For a long time, Elder Terran said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. The prophecy said winds and stars would unite when the darkness rose. Perhaps this is what it meant. He turned to the council. Prepare 20 mounts and volunteers from the scout wing. The humans will train with them. Kair slammed his hand against the table. You'll regret this, he shouted, storming out. Mason watched him go. He's not wrong, he murmured. We're gambling the entire planet. Ryla looked at him, eyes fierce. Then we make sure we win. By dawn, the training fields outside the outpost were alive with chaos. 20 erics circled the cliffs, their wings stirring storms of dust. Human pilots, still reeling from cryo-sleep and transport fatigue, stumbled as they learned to approach the massive creatures. Ryla barked orders in sharp VYR tones. Mason translated, sometimes softening her words, sometimes not. One of the younger pilots, a woman named Lynn, approached nervously. They won't let us near them, she said. Mason smiled faintly. They don't trust easily. You have to think like they do. Not control them, connect. Connect how? He tapped her chest. Here first. The rest will follow. Lynn stepped forward again, her movements slow, open. The erics watched her carefully. Then, unexpectedly, it lowered its head. Ryla's eyes widened. She did it, she whispered. All across the field, others began trying. Most failed. Some succeeded. Those who did felt it instantly. A rush through the spine, a heartbeat that wasn't their own. The first bonds formed under the rising suns. By the third day, 14 pairs stood ready. The rest were sent back, trembling, exhausted, but alive. Mason stood before the new riders, scanning their ranks. Humans and VYR, side by side. They told me you couldn't work together, he said. You just proved them wrong. Ryla stepped beside him. And now we test what you've built. That night, they met alone near the cliff where they'd first flown together. The wind was cold, carrying dust and the faint sound of engines below. You think it will work? Ryla asked quietly. Mason gazed toward the horizon. The mountains were dark silhouettes against a burning red sky. It has to. If we don't stop the reactivation, everything dies. Not just here, but anywhere those things can reach. Ryla studied him. And if we fail? He met her eyes. Then humanity goes down doing what it does best, fighting the impossible. For a moment, the tension melted. Ryla stepped closer, her silver hair brushing against his arm. You talk like someone who's already accepted his fate. Maybe I have. He smiled faintly. But I haven't accepted yours. She laughed softly. Still trying to protect the alien girl? Human? Maybe just the one who flew beside me. Ryla's smile faded into something gentler. You're strange, Mason Drake. You break every rule that's supposed to keep our worlds apart. He reached for her hand. Maybe that's what needs breaking. The wind howled around them, scattering dust and memory. Above, Stormlance roared from his perch as if sensing the coming storm. By morning, the sky had turned the color of ash. Tremors shook the outpost again, stronger now, deep and rhythmic. A voice crackled through Mason's comm. Captain Hain reporting. Coalition ships arriving in orbit. They're reading massive power surges beneath the mountains. Whatever's down there is waking fast. Mason's jaw tightened. Then we move now. Ryla called her riders. Humans mounted beside VYR, their Erics crying into the wind. The sound rolled across the cliffs like thunder. The horizon split with lightning, not natural, but alive, crawling through the clouds in geometric lines. The mountain peaks pulsed faintly blue. Ryla turned to Mason. You ready to teach gods how to fly? He grinned despite the fear in his gut. Let's remind them who taught the stars to burn first. Stormlance screamed, wings spreading wide, and the squadron launched as one. 14 pairs of riders from two worlds rising into a sky that had never seen their like. For the first time in history, humans and VYR flew as one army. And below them, in the heart of the mountains, something vast began to open its eyes. The wind tore across the cliffs like it wanted to strip the world bare. Lightning rippled between the peaks, lines of pure energy snaking down into the valleys where the ground now moved. The awakening had begun. From above, the view was apocalyptic. The mountain range glowed with veins of blue fire. Entire slabs of stone cracked open to reveal metallic corridors pulsing with light. Giant, graceful figures were rising from the fractures. Devourers, the ancient makers, tall as trees, their bodies glowing faintly beneath translucent skin. They weren't screaming. They were singing, their low harmonic tones vibrating through the air like the heartbeat of the planet itself. Control hubs are opening under every settlement, Ryla shouted over the comm, her voice nearly drowned out by the wind. Mason steadied his breath. Then we start where it began, the Temple of Winds. The squadron moved in tight formation. Humans and VYR, side by side. 14 Erics dove through clouds thick with static, their wings trailing sparks of plasma. From above, they looked like comets cutting across the sky. Coalition support incoming. Captain Hain's voice crackled through Mason's headset. Orbital sensors show a global network activating. Whatever you're doing, you've got less than 2 hours before it hits full resonance. Mason tightened his grip on the neural ridge beneath his palms. Copy that. We'll shut it down from the source. The Temple of Winds had become a battlefield. Devourer drones, small, silver, and terrifyingly fast, rose from the broken ground like hornets. Their movements were impossibly precise, guided by some shared intelligence. The first volley hit before the riders even touched down. Plasma fire streaked the sky. One of the younger pilots, Lynn, banked too late. Her Erics screamed as energy tore through its wing. They spiraled downward. Ryla cursed and dove after her, catching the girl midair and guiding both mounts into a rough but survivable landing. Stay behind cover, Mason barked. Pick your targets. Use the neural pulses, not your weapons. The riders focused together. Their shared resonance, the link between human and Eric's, between Eric's and VYR, sent shockwaves through the swarm. The drones wavered midair, flickering like disrupted frequencies. That's it, Ryla gasped. They're vulnerable to neural interference. Then we hit them harder, Mason replied. Squadron, synchronize pulse on my mark. 3, 2, 1. 14 riders screamed as one, their minds linked through instinct and adrenaline. The sky erupted with invisible force, a wave of resonance that shattered half the swarm. The survivors retreated into the fissures, leaving behind trails of fading blue fire. Silence fell for a breath. Then the mountain moved again. The ground split open beneath the temple courtyard, revealing a massive spiral shaft descending into the earth. At its core, a pulsing crystal the size of a starship heart glowed, the central resonator. That's our control hub, Mason said, his voice grim. If we can reverse the flow, we can force the Devourer network into stasis. Kair landed beside them, his armor cracked, face bleeding but defiant. You'll never make it down there alive. Then you'd better come with us, Mason said, locking eyes with him. Kair hesitated, then nodded once. For VYR. For everyone, Mason corrected. They descended through the glowing spiral, Stormlance leading the way. The deeper they went, the heavier the air became, thick with vibration, as though the mountain itself was alive and breathing around them. The shaft opened into an enormous chamber. Thousands of conduits led from the walls into the central crystal, which pulsed like a living heart. At its base, a devourer stood waiting. Taller than any they had seen before, its presence filled the space with quiet authority. Its eyes glowed with intelligence, not malice. When it spoke, its voice was a chord, layered, ancient, beautiful, and terrifying. Children of my children, it said, you have returned to the womb. Ryla drew her blade, though it trembled in her grip. We're not your children. The being tilted its head. You are our design, shaped from our code, tempered by time. You were meant to continue our work. Your work ended when you enslaved them, Mason said coldly. The Devourer studied him with fascination. The outsider, the anomaly. The resonance within you is incomplete, yet strong. You and this female, your connection echoes ours. It awakens what sleeps. Good, Mason said, because I'm about to put it back to sleep. He ran forward, diving for the crystal interface. Energy surged under his boots, burning through his suit. Ryla followed without hesitation. The Devourer raised a hand, and arcs of electricity leapt across the chamber, striking Kair and hurling him backward. Mason slammed his palms onto the crystal surface. Pain exploded through his skull, not physical pain, but a flood of alien thoughts, billions of voices whispering all at once. He screamed. Ryla caught his shoulder. Don't fight it. Focus. Their link snapped open. Suddenly, he wasn't alone. Her mind joined his, calm, fierce, luminous. He felt her memories, the wind, the plains, the first flight. She felt his, fire, loss, the endless stars. Together, they became something new. The crystal responded. Lines of light branched across its surface, fractals weaving into harmony. The entire mountain began to hum, matching the rhythm of their heartbeat. Neural feedback rising. Ryla shouted. Hold it. Mason gritted his teeth. We're almost through. Above them, the Eric's riders felt it too. Their bonds resonated through the sky, joining the signal. Every human, every VYR, every creature linked to the winds poured their consciousness into the same pulse. The world itself became a song. The Devourer staggered back, its form flickering. Impossible. You are not evolved for this. Maybe not, Mason said through clenched teeth, but we adapt fast. He pushed everything, his focus, his fear, his love for Ryla, into the resonance. The crystal blazed white, then burst outward in a wave of energy so pure it silenced the planet. When the light faded, Mason lay on the ground, chest heaving. The chamber was still. The central crystal had gone dark. Ryla knelt beside him, her hand trembling as she touched his face. You did it, she whispered. You stopped it. He smiled weakly. No, we did. Kair limped closer, clutching his side. The devourer stood frozen mid-motion, like a statue caught between moments. "What happened to them?" he asked. Ryla looked up at the silent figure. "They're not dead, just paused. The resonance locked them in stasis, but the system remains intact." "So they're asleep again," Mason said, pulling himself to his feet. "For now." He glanced around the vast chamber. The walls still pulsed faintly, not with menace, but with memory, a quiet heartbeat waiting for someone to listen again. Ryla turned to him. "You risked your life for a world that isn't yours." He smiled faintly. "It is now." Above them, the skies of VYR were clear for the first time in weeks. The twin suns rose over the horizon, lighting the new world they had saved together. But deep within the dark heart of the mountain, the faintest vibration remained, a single note reverberating through stone, waiting to be heard. And somewhere beyond the stars, something answered back. 3 months passed, but the echoes of that final pulse still haunted the air. VYR was quiet now, not the silence of ruin, but of healing. The skies no longer burned blue with lightning, and the mountains had settled into uneasy peace. The devourers remained locked beneath the stone, frozen mid-song, their crystalline network dormant. For the first time in centuries, the wind sounded like wind again. From high above Outpost Verdun, the world looked new. The scars on the cliffs had been patched with steel and glass. Towers rose from the ruins, half human, half VYR design, functional, beautiful, and alive. On the training fields below, humans and VYR worked together, adjusting harnesses, calibrating scanners, feeding Eric's hatchlings that shimmered like silver rain. A new generation was learning to fly. Mason Drake stood on the edge of the overlook, the dawn light catching the scar along his jaw, a gift from the Resonance War. His reflection glowed faintly in the glass of his new neural band, a hybrid interface built from both Terran tech and VYR resonance crystals. Behind him, the sound of boots and soft laughter approached. "You never rest, do you?" Ryla's voice was calm, almost teasing. She walked up beside him, her blue skin radiant under the suns, a faint shimmer of silver tracing the veins along her temple. Proof that the resonance had changed her too. She now carried a piece of the signal that had once threatened to destroy her world. Mason smiled. "I could say the same about you." She leaned against the railing beside him. "You helped rebuild what we nearly lost. The humans say you turned soldiers into riders." He shrugged. "They did that themselves. I just told them where to put their hands." Ryla laughed softly, that wind-chime laugh he'd learned to crave. "You never stop hiding behind jokes." "Old pilot habit," he said. "Keeps me from thinking too hard about how close we came to ending everything." Her gaze shifted toward the horizon. "Maybe endings aren't always bad. Some stories have to burn before new ones can breathe." They stood in silence, watching the Erics sweep over the plains. Below, Lynn, the youngest human pilot, guided her bonded mount into a sharp dive, rising again in perfect rhythm. Ryla smiled. "She's better than I was at her age." "She's better than both of us," Mason said. "That's the point." Behind them, heavy steps echoed. Kayer emerged from the lift, his once proud armor now patched with human plating. He carried a flight helm under one arm. His scarred face was softer, older somehow. "Commander Drake." "Wing Leader Ryla," he said formally, then cracked a faint smile. "Never thought I'd see the day when our squads trained together without trying to kill each other." "Neither did I," Mason said. "Guess miracles happen when you throw humans into the mix." Kayer grunted. "Don't push it, human. I still remember you almost fried half our planet." "Hey," Mason said, raising his hands. "Almost is the key word." Ryla rolled her eyes. "You two will never change." Kayer grew serious. "The council wants you both at the temple. There's movement beneath the peaks." Mason's shoulders tensed. "Movement? Not from below," Kayer said, glancing at Ryla. "From within. The crystal cores are stabilizing. Energy levels are steady, self-regulating. The Devourer's network isn't dying, it's evolving." They exchanged a look. The kind that said we've been here before. Ryla exhaled slowly. Maybe the resonance didn't destroy them. Maybe it woke something else. "Let's hope it learned compassion," Mason muttered. The Temple of Winds was rebuilt as both monument and laboratory. Its once sacred walls now hummed with quiet technology. Human engineers worked beside VYR scholars, decoding the frozen patterns etched into the crystal floors. Mason and Ryla stepped into the main chamber, the same place where they had once nearly burned alive. In the center, a faint light pulsed inside the main crystal. Soft, regular, peaceful. A VYR technician looked up from her console. "It's not dangerous," she said quickly, "but it's responding to your neural frequencies." "Mine?" Ryla asked. "And yours," the tech added, looking at Mason. "Both of you." The light grew brighter as they approached. The same rhythm as before, two heartbeats syncing, two signals weaving into one. Then, unexpectedly, words formed inside their heads, not in sound, but in thought. "Balance achieved. Cycle reset." The song continues. Ryla froze. "Did you hear that?" "Yeah," Mason said quietly. "And I don't think it's a warning this time." The crystal dimmed again, leaving behind only the faint echo of music, like wind moving through hollow stone. The message was clear enough. The world wasn't ending. It was beginning again. That evening, the council gathered to honor the fallen and recognize the unity that had saved VYR. Humans and VYR stood together beneath banners that rippled in the golden air. Elder Terran spoke first, his voice steady. "There was once fear between us. Then there was war. Now, there is wind, shared, not owned. That is how peace must sound." When the ceremony ended, Mason and Ryla slipped away to the cliff edge, their place. Stormlance waited nearby, older, calm, his scales reflecting starlight. The night was quiet except for the endless hum of the wind through the canyon. "So," Mason said, hands in his jacket pockets. "What's next for us?" Ryla tilted her head. "Us as in humans and VYR, or us as in you and me?" He grinned. "Dealer's choice." She laughed, soft and genuine. "Then both. For humans and VYR, exploration. Not of war, but of connection. We learn from what came before and don't repeat it. As for you and me," she stepped closer. "We fly." The twin moons rose above them, painting the cliffs in silver light. Ryla placed her hand over Mason's heart, feeling the steady beat beneath. "You know," she said quietly, "the winds have a word for what we did." "Yeah? What's that?" "Remembrance." "Remembrance," he repeated, tasting the word. "I like that." Stormlance spread his wings, massive and bright against the sky. The air shimmered with the faint blue trace of resonance, no longer a weapon, but a bond. Mason climbed onto the mount behind Ryla. "Where to?" he asked. "Where the wind takes us," she said, smiling. They launched into the night, two figures silhouetted against the moons, leaving a streak of light behind. Below them, the rebuilt world slept in peace. Above, the stars waited, watching, listening, remembering. And somewhere, deep beneath the mountains, a faint hum answered the sky. Not of danger, but of awakening, a promise whispered between species that had once feared each other. The winds of VYR carried the song onward, across the stars, where humanity and the VYR would someday rise again, not as conquerors, not as creations, but as riders of the same sky.